Hello, Realtors. Welcome back to GADCast, brought to you by the Shore-Barrington Association of Realtors. My name's Joe Roth, and I'm your local government affairs director at NSBAR. Let's get started with our show. Thanks for joining us, Realtors. This week we have a very special guest. I'm honored to have a man that needs little introduction, a longtime Realtor and current chairman of NSBAR's Government and Political Issues Committee, Mr. Don Gelfund. Don, welcome to GADCast.
Hello there, Joe. Thank you for having me on. It's an honor and a pleasure to talk about something that I'm extremely passionate about, that being, of course, GPIC. And I am the chair for about the last 2 years. And I've been a member of the committee for a very long time, which, of course, we'll be talking about shortly.
Yeah, so how long have you been a member now?
It seems to be since about 1998 or 1999. I went to my first GPIC meeting. At that time, it was called Government and Political Affairs, under the late chair, Phil Leakley. And being somebody with political interest and maybe some political ambitions at the time, I thought, wow, this is very interesting. We get to talk about politics, and people want to talk about politics and about local issues, and even the gossip that happens in local politics. At that point, I was not only interested, but I started to make some very good friends there. One who would later become the chair, that was Mr. Keith Hancock, who needs a little introduction, and Tom Rabarchik. They were some of my early friends there. And around 2001, I went to my first Capitol Conference, which is in Springfield. That's, of course, when we descend upon the legislature and 400 to 700 friendly realtors talk to our legislators about issues that affect their business, the consumer, and in many cases, the Illinois economy. And we are there to educate them. It's not political. It's not all the things that people call political dirty business or anything like that. We are an information rod. We are a lot of what helps them make decisions that make sense. So, as you can tell, it's kind of an addictive thing, and I love going to Springfield. I love the relationships we've made. I'm going to say something that not everyone may agree with, but politicians are people too. They're very nice. They can be very nice because they're our neighbors. They're our representatives. They are us in an elected office.
That's a great point, Don. They are representative is the key word, right? They're there to represent their community, so they're a part of those communities, and very much as realtors are. So I think there's a kindred spirit there in terms of being representative, but it's definitely a great event, and we'll get to Capitol Conference here in a minute. But John, you've been involved in the committee for quite a while, and during the committee meetings, we talk about local issues. We talk about what's happening in Northbrook or in Glencoe or Highland Park or Barrington. We hit the local issues as is our charge, to really focus on those local policies that are impacting the realtors day to day. Now, over 20 years, you've seen a lot of local issues. But what are those, whether it's 10 years ago or 2 weeks ago, what's really resonated with you as to the, why we're doing this and how we're helping, realtors and their clients?
Well, there's a number of issues, and one of them, we'll take one for instance. In Glencoe, they're trying to impose home rule, and home rule sounds it sounds wonderful on paper. Oh, your village board will control things, but it gives them a lot more authority to pass certain taxes and do other legislative things that may be more suited for referendum. And it's nice if you love your board there. You say they're the most honest, most wonderful people. But in one election, you could end up with some real amateurs who will then use the home rule and then use it almost like a dictatorship. And what we have done over the years is we've made it very clear to the residents of those communities that this is why you should not allow for this. It still allows your village to be run and run properly, but it's basically a balance of power, so you don't have that kind of manipulation over over ordinance, etc. So getting a Glencoe to back down from home rule is a win for us. Other things like transfer taxes. Transfer taxes, are often cited as a revenue source for some perceived budget shortfall, etc. And what a village might do, or a municipality, is say for every $1,000, you may need to pay $5 per thousand on a home sale. So if a seller is selling a house for $500,000, he just gave his village $2,500 for the pleasure of moving out. He doesn't get anything else for that. They get $2,500. He nets $2,500 less. On the flip side, if he's buying a home somewhere where there's that same transfer tax, and it could happen in both sides, he gives them $2,500 as basically a move-in fee for what we don't know.
Admission fee.
Yeah, it's an admission fee to the club called whatever community wants this transfer tax. Now, that's all fair and good. You start to say, well, they need revenue. Yes, but there are other sources of revenue. And when you do a transfer tax, it has to go in front of the voters as a referendum. Now, that's where we advocate and we start to say to the buyers of homes or the sellers, this is going to cost you. Is this what you want? And most people, if you say, would you like a tax or you don't want a tax, will probably say they don't want any more taxes. That's another.
It's a backdoor property tax. Yeah.
We tend to oppose big impact fees for the pleasure of tearing down an old house to build a new house, because in all truth, a village will do better with a brand new structure on a parcel than one that is completely functionally and possibly in safety ways obsolete. A new building creates a number of permit fees and a higher tax bill, etc. It does not necessarily increase population and overload a school. So we have a tendency to basically advocate not for our own interest. I mean, yes, it's nice to make money, it's nice to be successful, but it's also, who are we? We represent people, and we represent the people who are trying to, make a living and afford housing.
Yeah, Don, that's so very well put. And I think, it goes back to our commitment to the housing market, to property ownership. I think that's a really great point you're making there, because, as I tell the story, I like to say that realtors aren't, their interest in the realtor interest is about the success of property ownership. Yeah, you're involved in the transaction to acquire or to transfer property, but really our agenda and what we fight for is for the lifespan of that property and for the success of that property owner throughout. I think those are great points. And, going back to home rule, even that, as you mentioned, one of the big contentious points about home rule is that once they have this authority, it's unlimited taxing potential. In fact, the property tax caps go away, and any decisions made by one bad board in the moment can be paid for by the community for 20 years or longer. And so your great points there. Thank you for that.
And just to add on that is what you were saying about the real estate business. The economy is driven very heavily on a home sale or purchase. So much ties into it. And,
Absolutely.
And you start to you start to add it up and see all the ancillary, purchases and services that go along with a house. Yes, the real estate broker gets a commission, and then the attorney gets a fee. And then, and there might be, there's various state and local taxes anyway. State's going to get a piece no matter what. So will the county in many cases. And then, the carpet installer, the remodeler, the window company, Amazon.
The furniture store.
Even though I'm not in a home purchase right now because we're all cocooning during this essential COVID lockdown, or at least partial lockdown. My wife, I think, has her own Amazon truck right now, and we're getting in products that make for a home: new light fixtures, paint, rugs, and just imagine if we were moving. My goodness, how many more trucks she'd have to reserve. So when you take that all into account, and you start to have unlimited taxing from a community and transfer taxes, that's just it takes dollars away from other places where people have an economy. You won't be able to buy as many rugs on Amazon, etc.
Well, and I think NAR does a very nice summary of this, of the kind of in the state of Illinois, what the economic impact is of a home sale.
How much is it?
You see, I don't remember the exact number, but I do remember that we make up a little more than 16% of the state's gross product. Because when you add on that kind of ancillary growth, and beyond even those pieces, you start talking about the how many sales is new construction required, and then the impact of new construction. And so there's a really big impact on the entire community based upon the real estate market. So it is a vital piece, and it's something we always have to be in front of elected officials reminding them of, and not just our state officials, the local as well as federal. And I think those are very important things you're hitting on there, Don.
Well, yeah, in 31 years of selling real estate, I think I can count about 4 or 5 recessions. And during those recessions, when real estate's slowed way down, especially the debacle of about 2006 to 2012, you would see a ripple effect. If the houses stopped selling, then there were issues with other areas. Construction people were sidelined, etc. And so yes, if you do not take care of this real estate industry, take us out of this one, a lot of people will be in big trouble because, again, housing is a strong indicator of the nation's economic health.
Yes, and so Don, I want to go back. You had mentioned Capital Conference, and I want to go back to that a little bit because you're also involved with Illinois Realtors, and you're a regular attendee, like you said, of Capital Conference, but also of other events that tend to focus on advocacy. Things like the public policy meetings that are typically held in January, although going to probably be a little bit different this year. But
yes.
You're also serve in the role as a state legislative contact. Now, many of our viewers might not understand what that is or know what that is. So can you talk a little bit about that role that you play?
Yes, Joe. In the state of Illinois, we have 118 representatives in the General Assembly and 59 state senators. Each one of them, through Illinois Realtors, has a state legislative contact. And that's an honor that is bestowed upon members of the various committees. And they are assigned to basically be the go-to person to that specific representative, often in their own home districts, but not necessarily. And if there's a call to action on a piece of legislation, they are expected to pick up the telephone or get the email or or visit their office and discuss the issue and what our position is and why they should either side with it or be against that particular piece of legislation. And it's not frequent, but it is relationship management with our representatives. As I said earlier, the politicians are people too, and some of them are very, very nice. They are our neighbors and our representatives. And in fact, when I've done this over the years, one of the recommendations that came from one of the coordinators, who was also a realtor and an SLC himself, was, he says, hey, make sure, and he called every one of us, he says, make sure you call your representative and wish him a happy holidays. And I laughed because I thought to myself, I chat with my legislator all the time. We text each other. And it not only establishes an interesting friendship, but they often will come to us, the SLCs, and say, we have this, what is your position? Please give us some background on it. And that happens more often than you can imagine. And this way, while they are our representatives, we are helping them craft the kind of legislation that makes a state move smoothly and a business go well. And again, back to the consumer, this is all a matter of being good government.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I think I've always thought that this is a really important role, especially with, even understanding the impact of policy decisions on the local housing market. Who better to educate them than a realtor that works and lives in the community that they serve? And having that understanding, that context is really vital. And informed decision making is something that I think most elected officials take very, very seriously, very much embrace. Mm-hmm. And I think being that information source to them is a really great role. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I recall, one of the more current issues was rent control. And, rent control sounds wonderful in theory and on paper. Let's keep the rents, affordable. And we certainly are, it's better to have something more affordable than less affordable. But, naturally there are pitfalls with every good idea may have some serious pitfalls, and this is one of them. And many of us on this committee and throughout the state had meetings with our legislators and illustrated the point and said, here's how it's going to hurt your constituents. Here are very, very specific problems with it. And, well, we both agree that rents are high. Nobody's going to say the rents are too low. They see what those issues are, and then can begin looking at other initiatives and other incentives to make housing less problematic. But that's an example of advocacy, and it's done at the SLC level.
That's great information, Don. One last topic I want to hit here is I want to talk a little bit about community involvement, because really that's at the core of everything we're talking about here is realtors engaged in their communities. Now we're kind of looking at it in the context of elected officials and everything, but there's a lot of ways that realtors engage in their communities, right?
More ways than I could count in a short podcast. I'll give some personal examples. As I said, when I first got into GPIC, I think the quote was from Chairman Leakley, if real estate is your business, so is politics, something to that effect. Because politics does drive everything, and whether it's office politics or even the politics of trying to get a listing or make a sale with another broker, politics is everything. And and understanding that and getting involved in the committee meant that I looked for other opportunities to be involved. So what ended up happening is from that point, I started to get interested in my own village. I happen to be a Lincolnwood resident, and I began going to village meetings and looking at what opportunities can I do to give back to my committee. So I got very familiar with the that current that board of trustees and the mayor, and I got appointed to one commission, and then another commission was created. I was appointed and then became the chairman of it, and did that for 12 years. At the same time, an opportunity to run for a local office as a township trustee came in front of me, and I thought, my goodness, I can do more for the community this way. And it becomes it's volunteerism, and people whether they're volunteering with their religious institution or volunteering to read to people at a library, these are opportunities that you, the real estate salesperson, can give back and say, I don't just sell the houses here, I make this community better, which certainly means the houses should be sold in this better community that I am making a difference in. And volunteerism is, there's a certain kind of like a runner's high you get from it.
Mm-hmm.
And it really is a matter of reaching out. And we as realtors do support candidacies and encourage this kind of giving back to the community. And in fact, I know that there are in this next election cycle in April, there will be several realtors, members of this board and other boards, who are going to be seeking local elected offices. Certainly not for the big pay, but because they want to see these communities thrive that they represent as brokers, and this is an opportunity for them to look to the real estate look to the real estate industry in terms of our advocacy to help them. I understand Illinois Realtors can help counsel candidates. Our PAC is out there to help with endorsing and supporting those candidates.
Some good points here, because I think it's important that members always know that there's ways that you can leverage NSBAR in your community engagement. Mm-hmm. Whether it's, and you made reference to the candidate trainings that we've offered to realtor candidates running for office for the first time. Of course, there's RPAC support for candidates, but even if you're trying to improve a park in your neighborhood, there's mm-hmm. grant monies available through NSBAR. You just need to pick up
Absolutely.
The calls, and there's opportunities to leverage NSBAR to help engage and improve your communities.
Which is just another avenue, especially in these times. And unfortunately, I'm going to bring up the C word again, COVID, where there are a number of communities that are very hard pressed to do the improvements, and they're deferring various maintenance and purchases. Yes, they should look to Illinois Realtors, the National Association, NSBAR, for any kind of pointers. It's better to seek it out and ask, and if it goes nowhere, that's fine. If you don't do anything, it absolutely goes nowhere.
Any closing thoughts before we wrap up here?
Pretty much, this is a committee that people are welcome to get involved in. We definitely seek input and support. I think it's good to look into being into a GPIC meeting. I would recommend contacting myself, Don Gelfund, or Joe Roth to learn more about this. If you are looking to be a candidate for a local office, certainly give us a call so that we can at least talk about your candidacy and maybe give you a few pointers. In the meantime, there will be, we will get out of COVID. We will go back to Springfield. We will go back to Washington. So I would say stay tuned and keep up with the local affairs. And I'd say to anybody that if your village has a meeting, even if it's on an app or on the TV, tune in and be informed. So not just that you know what's going on, you can tell others how wonderful your community is.
That's great info. Don, it's always a pleasure. We thank you for taking the time to talk with all of us today, and be well.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for allowing me an opportunity to discuss this, and a happy holidays to everybody.
And that does it for this episode of GADCast. If you have questions, comments, or topics you'd like us to discuss, feel free to email me. It's joe@nsbar.org. This is our last GADCast of 2020. We'll see you again in January of 2021. Until then, be well, everyone, and happy holidays.